And based on this change from, let's say, 2020 or 2019 to today, 2025, how does that change sort of the healthcare investing, not necessarily dynamic, but almost like the trends? Do you now invest in different things because
Mhm.
of the additional higher bar that needs to be set, whereas in the past you would have invested in something, something else because the bar was different? So maybe you can speak a little bit about the healthcare investing trends that you see right now in your world.
Yeah, so there are two things that drives the trend, right? One is availability of technology, that's one end. On the other hand is, the availability of capital. Um, let's talk about the technology first, right? So right now, I think the most powerful trend is really convergence. The traditional boundaries between biotech, medtech, digital health are fundamentally blurring, and you can see these everywhere. Hospitals are not just care centers, they're becoming real world data platforms, right? And then medtech and pharma companies are engaging consumers directly, and big tech is embedding artificial intelligence into everything from drug discovery to surgical robotics and so on. So here, the new frontier is not really innovation per se, but it's integration. And the companies that can connect across silo, from data to drug, device to delivery, linking patients directly to the payer, um, will be the ones that will attract investment. So if we double click on that, let's start at the scientific end of the spectrum, because what's happening upstream is really exciting today and it's driving a lot of the investments. So we are really at this incredible moment where biology and computation are coming together in a profound way. And it started with our ability to actually measure biology at a level that we've never seen before. For example, next generation sequencing, which you are very familiar with, single cell RNA sequencing, proteomics, right? And then pairing that with the computational power that we have today had completely changed how we understand and model living systems. We are generating and interpreting biological data in ways that would seem like science fiction just a few years ago. And that's really interesting is how this is really shaping the pharma industry today, right? There's this whole generation of companies emerging, tech bio platforms that are using all these tools to design genuinely better therapeutics, like, for example, engineered T cell engagers, antibody drug conjugates, siRNAs, targeted protein degradation. So exciting. And they're being very smart about it by applying these advanced modalities to disease pathways that we already understand pretty well, and especially in high demand areas like oncology, information, and immunology. And they're actually improving their odds of clinical trials while moving faster from discovery to IND filing to early clinical data. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect is that the development strategies are also getting smarter. Companies are using places like Australia, China to move quickly through those early clinical phase 1B, 2A trials, where they can seamlessly go from safety signals to efficacy signals. And you're seeing way more partnerships, new co-licensing models. And the pharma side is also going into the table earlier than they used to, partly because they are looking at these massive patent cliffs and need to refill their pipelines. So the bottom line is science, data, and collaboration are converging in a way that's making drug development more predictable and more efficient. And that's driving a lot of the investments. on the biotech side. But moving beyond the lab and the drug pipeline, we are also seeing innovations in clinical trials. For decades, they have been slow, expensive, and really inefficient. But now we are seeing technologies that can capture real world data, continuously stratify patients, responders with precision, and also using that to personalize care pathways based on how someone is predicted to respond to a certain drug. And so we are moving these rigid one size fits all protocols into something that's more adaptive and intelligent. So this is on the drug discovery side, or drug development side. And on the other end, if you look at healthcare delivery, this is where the conversation has really shifted in the last few years, right? You mentioned about between 2019 to today, it's unrecognizable. So digital health have went through this massive hype cycle. During the time frame that we were talking about, there were tons of capital, huge valuation, promises of transformation, and then now we are in a very different phase, right? It's about proof. Does it actually work? Does it improve outcome? Do people pay for it? And the market's gotten a lot more disciplined, as you mentioned. But what's interesting is that's new, relatively recent, is that artificial intelligence is now genuinely applied across everywhere in this space. And it shows up in very different forms depending on the use case and the risk profiles. At the simplest level, you've got productivity tools that just make that administrative side of care less painful, like scheduling, billing, follow-ups, prior authorization. It's not the most interesting thing, but these tools are getting adopted very quickly because the return on investment is obvious and the risk is relatively low. And they just make the system run better. And yeah, then you have the middle layer that's really taking off now. AI scribes, clinical documentation tools, right? So it's huge because it's addressing something that's really real, clinician burnout, right? Doctors are spending hours every day on documentation, clicking through EHRs, and these tools are really giving their time back to focus on patients again. But still, there's a certain risk of hallucination, for example. Therefore, doctors are still in the loop. So it's a little, the risk is a little higher than the plain, productivity tools. And then at the higher end, I think this is where it's really, really interesting. You've got regulated clinical AI that are maturing, that are directly involved in patient care. We are talking about imaging pathology systems that are FDA cleared and actually making diagnostic decisions or helping make diagnostic decisions because, again, there's still a human in the loop. And I believe there are over hundreds, couple hundreds of these FDA cleared software as medical device right now, which is wild. If you consider there were basically very little 10 years ago. They're detecting cancers, informing surgical margins, for example, and planning radiation treatments. And then you are seeing on the other end surgical AI emerging as a really competitive and compelling category. So these are computer vision systems that integrate directly with robotic surgical platforms, analyzing video feeds in real time, you know, um, identifying anatomical structures and flagging complications. So, and data has shown that these are reducing operative time and also complications by like 20-30%. So I think even though the adoption across these type of higher risk clinical surgical AI are slower because you're dealing with reimbursement questions, right, data privacy, hospital governance, liability concerns, but the long-term potential are extraordinary. You can really bring about the promise of earlier detection, safer procedures, better outcomes, and genuinely lower cost of care. And I believe we will see this accelerate over the years, and this is where I see the most impact of artificial intelligence in patient care.
Perfect.